Today we are going to be discussing how your social strategy can really evolve, as we all know, and just make sure that you're keeping your brand relevant and just really strong in the current times that we're facing. So we have gone through some pretty extensive research on market trends and have put together some pretty critical, I guess, high-level strategies that you can use to drive cost-effective social media marketing strategies and really just make sure that your brand is ready for your business. So you'll be learning about building that meaningful connection with social using social listening, content strategy, and then also we'll touch on an integrated paid and organic plan to connect better with your all-important audiences. So as we mentioned, some of you may have already heard from me before, but I'm really excited to be back with you today at DLF. So I'm the industry marketing strategist at Hootsuite, which means that I really focus on our brand across all industries. So I know that a few of you have spoken to us about kind of finance specific plans, maybe educational specific plans. So that's really what I focus on globally. And I'm joined with Alexandra as well.
Hi everyone, I've kind of already introduced myself, but yeah, me and Dominique work in the same team, and we're kind of really into our industry data and general market data, and always happy to share our findings and insights. So a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. So to reduce chances of buffering, close any bandwidth heavy apps. This presentation that we are presenting to you today is going to be shared with you after this session. And also you're more than welcome to join the conversation with us at Hootsuite and also your peers on Twitter. We are at Hoot Business. So in the next 30 minutes, we are going to talk about the changes in the digital media landscape that's taken place this year. Obviously, that's quite a lot, so we're just going to filter them through to the most essential ones and explain how we think at the moment it's very important to focus on building connections rather than driving conversions. And then kind of delve deeper into how to do it using social media. And of course, in the end of the session, we will have time for your questions. But it doesn't mean that you can't answer it beyond within this session. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter or directly. We'll share our contacts in the end of the session as well.
Excellent. So back over to me. So I'm going to kick things off discussing how social usage has really changed. So as you can expect, here at Hootsuite, we have really been monitoring the ups and the downs of social media trends and all of the changes in product usage as well across social networks. So that's such as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, I'm sure you know them all. But amongst other channels, social media has really been at the forefront of communication during these uncertain times, as we all mention far too often at the moment. But we have all been using social to communicate both with our colleagues, our friends, to close deals and communicate with our customers, or just to reach out to our customers and communities to reassure them that, yeah, really, we are all in this together. So let's kick things off by looking at some of the key trends on social media over the last 3 months. Now, one of the first trends that's really crystallizing more and more is that conversation on social can really take center stage in that physically distanced world. So Alexandra and we are working at home at the moment in our home offices, but we have been able to work really effectively with our teammates virtually despite this physical distance. Now, the in-person relationships that we're all used to and the experiences that we normally plan, this type of event would have been taken face-to-face usually. These are no longer a given in these certain times, so we've all been able to adapt and change. And in order to compensate for the lack of what we tend to call the immediacy effect of those face-to-face events, all of us have started to just talk more and more and reach out virtually. Now, both commercial and personal conversations are being facilitated on social media. And you can see here, both WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger usage over doubled during these times. Now, forums like Reddit as well have reported immense increases in their traffic, and hundreds of thousands of community groups have emerged on Facebook in order for people to connect over the kind of burning issues and the information that they need straight away. So with most of the world grounded at home, it's not a surprise that our lives are really centered around the internet, either for work or for personal communication, from news to entertainment to sports. We are all consuming far more content than ever. So if you take a look at these graphs, you can see that Facebook, Netflix, and YouTube really are at the forefront of this rise in consumption. So in the world of apps, eMarketer projects that Instagram will actually see the biggest percentage of increase if we look at time spent by users this year in particular. Now, this is followed closely by Facebook and also Snapchat as well. Now, daily time amongst what we refer to as adult Instagram users will jump 13.8% this year, and that's to nearly 30 minutes per day. And that's down to creators, celebrities, and publishers all flooding to Instagram to really demonstrate how they are dealing with lockdown. What this indicates is content consumption is at an all-time high, and so is the increased scrutiny from consumers as well. And this can lead to content fatigue. It really is a critical time for brands and businesses to really be more aware of how they are communicating, what they're saying, and particularly not saying as well. Now, the nature of doing business has definitely shifted pretty much overnight, particularly for small and medium-sized businesses. Even though advertising spend online has suffered for a lot of business verticals, it is important to note that consumers do not expect all brands to just stop advertising. However, an extensive survey by eMarketer shows that about 75% of the respondents believe that brands should not exploit the global crisis just to drive sales. Consumers are more receptive to how brands are managing the situation, how they're supporting communities, or just positioning themselves as helpful in the new everyday. In situations like these, social should be used as a medium for building brand awareness and brand recall rather than hammering any promotional pieces. Building a relationship with your community and just displaying an empathetic identity that really cares can go a really, really long way. Now, your sales may be affected today, but if your followers find your content engaging, meaningful, and really relevant, then as well as your brand recall, a positive messenger during this service, it will uplift your reputation and, most importantly, your customer loyalty, which is so important. Now, if we look to pre-global crisis times, we observe that buying behaviours were already shifting online. We all know that. Now, with the lockdowns and social distancing in place, more and more people are resorting to online purchasing. Now, that's both for essential and non-essential goods. We have seen a tremendous increase in online retail orders and really high conversion rates too. Now, it is important to take understanding in these numbers in the broader context. Conversion rates are high and people are buying more, but only in certain segments. So, for example, if we look at the early spike there, it's food products, grocery, home goods, and of course the all-important fitness products now that we can't get to the gym. However, non-essential spending is actually seeing a significant downturn. This is mostly due to the rise in unemployment and conservative spending, particularly in the UK with furlough, for example. For a lot of B2B businesses, as well as non-essential retail, these numbers just won't resonate and it will take quite a long while for that to bounce back. However, one thing that is important to note is that CPMs, so cost per million impressions on Facebook, are at an all-time low, which does actually make it a great opportunity to drive campaigns that use CPM as a metric as opposed to cost per click. Lower CPMs can help you reach more people at a much lower cost. Therefore, brand awareness campaigns that can aim on getting visibility and impressions can be really effective at the minute. So now that we know all of these trends, what does it actually mean for your business and your social marketing? So now, as you can expect, is the time to build meaningful connections with your community, grow your brand, grow your presence, and build that all-important loyalty that can help with the long-term sales strategy. Now, these global events and crises have brought digital media to the forefront for all businesses. Thanks to lockdowns, more and more businesses have now been more digital and social first in order to survive more than anything. Even the small family-owned stores who weren't online at all previously have resorted to socials. So we've seen them setting up shops via Facebook or Instagram and included some sort of social media advertising for their business. Going social first is a bit of a mindset of building that meaningful connection and growing a brand community. Social can really be an important tool for establishing that brand voice and what kind of business you are. Now is the time to engage and show that. So grow your follower base rather than pushing any sales messaging. If you think about building connections over conversions, people who relate to your brand, find your content engaging and informative, will keep coming back. They will follow you and they will share your word. And nothing is more powerful than the word of mouth, as we know. Also, if you are going to go social first, or you already are, it is also time to just reevaluate that content strategy. Now, content can, of course, be a really powerful medium, but it is about using the right social channels too. You can use content to grow your business and in a much more cost-effective way than just running digital ads. So take, for example, us at Hootsuite. We recognize that in this time of crisis, our customers, as well as our target segment of prospects, they're just simply not going to look at investing in new software solutions at this time that may put their business at risk. And we understood that the best thing we could do to help our customers was just to help them be successful on social during all of this. We postponed pretty much all of our global marketing campaigns and focused on building more and more educational content for our social media marketers that could help them either just tweak their strategies or use the product better and use market insights to just optimize their ongoing business plans. All of our focus since then and over the last few months has pretty much just been ensuring that our customers who are either already using Hootsuite have just the necessary support to continue with their business with the help from social media marketing. And for people who just follow us and don't use the tool yet, they can use Hootsuite as a resource for all social strategy. And we're not pushing that for them to buy Hootsuite at all at this time. Now, so how do you actually build those meaningful connections on social media? So in the next few slides, I'm just going to take you through kind of a step-by-step process, I guess, on how to build the right social connections and some tools that may help you as well with that. So if we look, there are pretty much 3 steps to begin with. Number 1 is understanding your audience. It is really the first but most important step of building any social media strategy, and it is even more important right now. Understand your audiences not just by their demographic or their geographical information, but by their online behaviors. So what's their sentiment? What are they looking for? What are they spending on? And where are they actually looking for that information? Once you've identified your audience and really gazed into their sentiment, connect with them using content that is right for the current situation. Really focus on your tone here. Treat your community with empathy. People are, of course, sensitive during a time of crisis, whether that be COVID or any other crisis that may hit us. Something abrasive can have really far-reaching repercussions for your brand. Connecting with your community does require for you to just take a step back from your day-to-day messaging and serve content that's informative, offers help at all if you can, and inspires your community to just take a stand to help others. For example, if you're a brand that's contributing to relief efforts yourself, you could set up a crowdsourcing campaign as well, asking for your community to help others in need too. And finally, now is the time to focus on growing your brand community, as we've mentioned. You can do this by just using the right content and the right channels. Organic content combined with paid channels to amplify reach is a sure way to just ensure that more and more people are made aware of your brand. Over to you then, Alexandra.
Thank you, Dom. So let's talk a bit more in detail on the 3 steps that Dom just covered in the previous slide. So first of all, let's start with knowing your audience, knowing and understanding your audience. So at Hootsuite, we've come to the conclusion that the best way to do it is through social listening. And that's because as marketers, we often get carried away with behavioral data. And it's unsurprising, just look at these numbers. On average, one person has 8 social media accounts and spends around 142 minutes as in a single day on social media. You would think that amount of time would generate a wealth of information for brands to inform their marketing and social media strategies. However, as our partners at Brandwatch found out in their research, 96% of conversations taking place on social are actually unbranded, which means that unless you are doing an overall and holistic monitoring of the industry, as opposed to focusing on your brand and product mentions, you're actually missing out on a very critical amount of data that could provide very valuable insights for your marketing and social strategies. So social listening is an exercise that comprises of 2 parts. First of all, you need to monitor social media platforms and channels, and what you should be looking for is some specific topics around your brand, the products in your portfolio, your competitors, of course, and industry trends and events taking place at the time when you're looking to launch your campaigns. And once you've set up your monitoring and tracking, it's important, and started gathering data, it's important to analyze this data alongside other digital information that you gather from other channels. And once you understand the audio, the sentiment that drives certain behaviors of your prospective or existing customers, you can start building your campaigns around those sentiments. And in this way, the way you connect with your audience would be meaningful to both your audience and you as the organization. So now that I've touched on creating meaningful connections, let's talk more about what actually defines meaningfulness in the way you connect with your audience. So in this particular context, meaningful means valuable. And at Hootsuite, we've identified 3 key pillars that constitute value for customers, especially in the current climate. So first of all, the content you provide and the messaging that you employ must be based on empathy. The way you talk to your audience should be very genuine. So if you are struggling, there's no need to be there's no need to hide and pretend that it's all business as usual. Be very genuine and tell your audience what you're doing about the situation that you're facing. And also, as Dom mentioned previously, things like discounts, refunds, or easy access to services can be very helpful. And once you've offered something, be sure to follow through on your promises, because the second thing that you want to focus on in the way you connect with your audience is building trust. This is very important, because it might be compelling in the spur of the moment to do something that would put your brand out there, and you might want to reach out to as many people as possible. But where will these people go after the pandemic is over, when it's over? And you really want to capture those connections that you create and develop them into long-lasting relationships. And that being said, there's a lot of noise going on social media at the moment. So you actively want to combat misinformation, which means that when you are quoting third-party resources, you need to make sure they're trustworthy and credible. Also, it might be a good idea to set up a more sort of controlled publishing process within your organization so that you prevent possible crises. And generally, it's also a good idea to keep an eye on the social groups where your community are based and expressing their views, because this might help you to spot issues before they escalate. Now that we looked at the message that you want to deliver with your content, you also need to focus on the format of delivery, because it's just as important as the message you put out there. Now is a good time to experiment with different platforms and ways of delivering content. So, for example, video content is on the rise at the moment, such that by 2023, it's predicted to drive 82% of the overall traffic, which is absolutely massive. And and another thing that we at Hootsuite see as an increasing trend is employee advocacy. So more and more companies are turning to their employees to deliver their message into communities and different audience groups, because as our own research showed, 75% of people actually think that employees of companies are the most trustworthy resource of information on brands and these companies. So internal advocates are certainly very credible and very powerful. That's not to say that external influencers can also deliver great results on social. And as eMarketer found, over 30% of CMOs at the moment are actively exploring this way of communicating with their customers. As we've just shown, meaningful connections do not only relate to organic content, they can also be driven through paid channels. However, in the majority of the organizations we work with, performance marketing and social media marketing belong to different departments and don't often align in their objectives. So in the times of crisis, it's more important than ever that these two functions actually complement and complete each other. So in other words, paid and organic strategies need to be integrated. In the next slide, I'm just going to run you through the 3 steps of how paid and organic strategies can be integrated. This is going to make me sound like a broken record, but social listening is incredibly important, because that allows you to understand what's happening in the market, that can help you discover new audiences that you've previously didn't think to market to. And also you can generally get an understanding of marketing trends that are relevant to your audience, so certain things that resonate with them. Social listening is very important for that part. So once you get the idea of how to connect with your audience, you can start with building organic content and educating or informing your community about things that matter to them. And in this way, you can explore different types of content. It could be educational, informative, live, interactive. It's completely up to you. And as I've mentioned previously, now is a perfect time to experiment with different types of content. However, once you start engaging with your community, it's important to pay attention not only to the engagement that it creates, not only the sheer volume of engagement it generates for you, but also the context around it, because just because a Facebook post generates a lot of comments and reactions doesn't mean that they're all happy messages from your loyal customers. They could in fact be neutral or negative. So that means that you're not there yet, and you need to listen to your audience closely to perfect your organic strategy. And once you've mastered this step, it can be a good idea to start expanding your reach by boosting certain organic posts and content that worked with your community. In this way, you can reach out to these new audiences that you might have not covered previously, and also feel free to experiment with different platforms. They can all bring unexpected results. So keep an eye on how certain content resonates with the new audiences you covered. And then once you've gathered enough data from the previous two steps of your organic content performance and your sponsored content performance, you can then think about building a full-fledged advertising campaign. And if you are in a position and lucky enough to have the means to actually deliver such advertising campaigns, it's important to remember that people react to your call to actions differently in normal times and in the times of crisis. So the things that the CTAs that worked for you in the past might not perform that well in the current climate. And with that in mind, it might make sense to focus on the first stages of the buyer journey. So awareness and consideration. In that way, I'm just going to switch from theory to practice and show you some of the examples that we've identified in the past few months. So first of all, State Farm is one of our clients. They've been incredibly consistent and very quick to react ever since the pandemic has started. First of all, they issued a public statement where they explain their position and their commitment to support their communities. And then they regularly updated their communities on the status of the projects, be it crowdfunding projects or their company-sponsored projects that they launched. So they kind of consistently provided that support to the audience that's so valuable in the times of crisis. And they were actually very great at engaging their own employees to support this messaging as well, and advocate the sport. And obviously that showed their community more than anything their commitment to the cause. Another great example of this is sponsored content. The second step that I mentioned earlier comes from the Wall Street Journal. They would normally, in the normal times, focus on driving subscriptions to their platform, but recognizing that people are stressed, people have been working from home for ages, and they're probably just tired of the entire state of affairs in the world. They decided to boost one of the posts that would be relatable and would be seen as compassionate and empathetic by people in such circumstances. So they chose to go to this particular article they posted on their platform to engage new audiences. So it's worth noting that this ad went to their non-followers and people who are not subscribed to their services already. And a great example of an advertising campaign that's not pushing a salesy message and is mainly driven by the sentiment and the awareness, the kind of the desire to be closer and compassionate with your audience is IKEA. So in the marketing community, we'll know of IKEA as generally a brand that's more focused on selling the idea rather than selling specific homeware products. So they stuck to that principle in building this campaign. So very early on in the pandemic, they released this video and launched this Stay Home campaign that basically just spoke about the importance of home that was previously not particularly evident to us. We're spending the majority of our time outdoors and around other people's houses, but home is actually a very important place in everyone's life. So they brought that into focus with this campaign. And don't get me wrong, IKEA is still a profit-driven global corporation. So alongside this campaign, they would have advertising on social media, driving purchases, and supporting the e-commerce part of their business. But this campaign serves its purpose really well by putting IKEA front of the mind of their target audience. So even if they're not thinking about purchasing anything for their home at the moment, when they do have such a need, IKEA will be there and they will think about IKEA immediately. So yeah, this is a very, very good example of an advertising campaign that doesn't have a sales intent behind it.
I have to say that as soon as we were working from home and I went to try and find a desk, IKEA was completely sold out. So it's definitely working for them. So I'm just going to go back through the stages that we've kind of discussed there to wrap up. So firstly, we can't say it enough, is the kind of integrated organic and paid during a time of crisis. But during this time, it really is important to just think about your brand strategy. How are you going to reconnect with your customers and your followers? And that certainly in normal time, remember that social is always there as a brand tool to drive sales. But right now, it's a much stronger tool just to shift that focus to relationships, because that's what's going to really last you in the long term. So just summarizing all of that together. Firstly is listen and listen again to what your customers and potential audiences are saying. Now, deeply understand and track the changes in their behaviors too. Social listening is, of course, more important now because buying behaviors are constantly changing and can change quite drastically. Businesses, to be honest, just have no choice other than being social first right now. Now, secondly is creating content for the times. Your content really does need to reflect the changes in behaviors of your own customers. Now, build this content that resonates with your audience. So, for example, customers that are looking for, say, virtual medical treatments and consultations, your brand needs to really be at the forefront and delivering content to them so they know where to find it and what is involved. Quite similarly with banks, for example, if you're moving a variety of consultations online, then you need to invest in those secure tools, the security tools, and make sure that your content reflects this so that your audience is aware. Thirdly here is simplifying your goals. Advertising with social media will always remain relevant, but you do just need to simplify the goals and just tweak them ever so slightly to serve those different actions. So instead of just driving the generic kind of bottom funnel goals, your advertising strategy should drive more of that engagement and cater to those new KPIs. So for example, if you're an educational institution, a majority of your ad spend should now shift towards those online enrollments rather than booking the standard campus tours or signing up to courses, which may become more relevant, I guess, in a post-COVID world that we look at. And then, as Alexandra went through, is combining the organic and paid strategies. So take a step back from talking only in terms of one versus the other and bring them together. So invest in building great content and make sure that you are really amplifying the reach and driving engagement overall. Then is test and refine. I can't say that enough. I think Alexandra said it as well, but you can never test enough. Test different creatives and different audiences and really track where your followers drop off, and then test again with new content to move on to the next stage of their journey with you. A lot of times advertising marketers focus on those big kind of macro conversion goals, such as the purchases, the downloads or bookings with you. But right now it's probably a great time to test the micro conversions and just build a solid strategy around that. Finally is plan for the future. Use this time to just build some of those solid audiences that can drive the business for you later on. People may not be purchasing right now, but they will come back and make sure that they've got open eyes whilst they're planning for the future. Now, having said all of that we've said over the last kind of 20 minutes with you, there isn't going to be just one solution for all brands. So based on the vertical that you're in, your customer base, your product, your business, you will all face the crisis and different crises in different ways. Now, if you have the bandwidth to spend on social media, these strategies will help. And just help kind of keeping the business afloat and keeping on going, and just making sure that you're better prepared to accelerate the business, I guess, once it's all over.